Hi, this is Mark Graven. This is a bonus episode. It is a short 8-minute excerpt from episode 380, where Dr. Randal Pinkett shares some reflections on being the first and only Black winner on the program The Apprentice. So I ask him about that. He talks about rewatching the entire season recently with his daughter. And we're also joined by Dr. Jeffrey Robinson, professor at Rutgers Business School, an old friend of Dr. Pinkett's. Dr. Robinson was in the audience the night when Dr. Pinkett was chosen by Donald Trump as the winner, and for the strange events that unfolded after that. So I'll let them tell that story. I think it's really interesting. I hope you will check out the longer 50-minute discussion that includes a broader set of topics about workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can find that episode 380 right below this one in your podcast feed. Thanks. Randal, when you talk about being the first, I was going to ask this, so I'll go ahead and segue to it. You were, I think, quite famously the first and only, as it turned out, Black winner on The Apprentice. And you were treated very differently as the winner. I kind of invite you to tell the story, if you don't mind, about what happened and some of the dynamics of why you were treated differently than the other winners.
So I should mention that it's fresh on my mind because my daughter found the episodes of the show online, and we ended up watching the entire season together, which was a fascinating way of reliving the experience through the eyes of someone who wasn't even born when it happened.
That's right.
Wow. And you probably haven't watched it yourself in a very long time.
Not from end to end. I've seen snippets, but not from the beginning to the very end. I really enjoyed the journey. But to your question, there were 7 seasons of The Apprentice, 6 where there were white winners, and then 1 where I was the winner. I'm the only person of any color to have won on The Apprentice. And I was season 4, so I was right in the middle of the run of The Apprentice. And after I was hired, and for those who are listening and watching who aren't familiar with the show, it's 18 business people who compete every week on a task. There's a losing team, someone's fired, all the way down to the final 2, live television. Jeff was in the audience, Lincoln Center, 14 million people. I was hired in that moment. And without getting into too much detail of my performance against my adversaries, which was not equally matched, moments after being hired, I was asked, Randal, do you want to share the title with the white female runner-up? And my thoughts then are quite proudly my thoughts now. It was insulting. It was a moment where people asked, well, let me cut ahead. So my response was, no, if there's going to be a winner tonight, there's going to only be one, and it's going to be me. That was my response. I know that because I just watched the episode just recently. But then people kept asking, well, why didn't you share, Randal? Why didn't you do the magnanimous thing and share? My response is, no. Not why didn't I share? Why did he ask the question?
Right.
In the first place, if there were 3 whites before me who were not asked to share, and there were 3 whites after me who were not asked to share, why am I being asked to share? And so the question is not on me, the question's on him. Right. And I would argue that in 2020, we had the benefit of hindsight being 2020, no pun intended, 2020, that it was only a harbinger, my estimation, of things to come from the man who would now occupy the White House, that he didn't want to see me as the sole and single winner. And my message that night is my message today. It was my message to my daughter. And I said this to her in that moment after she watched it and said, why did he do it? I said, well, let me tell you what. Know this. When you've earned the victory, don't be afraid to claim the victory. And I claim what I rightfully earned.
Well, those were the rules of the game. My wife and I watched every episode of that season. We were cheering for you. I mean, I claim, MIT connections, and I'd only met you briefly at school, but that was a powerful connection, and we were rooting for you. And anyway, but thinking back to along the way, did you feel like was that? I mean, that moment was surprising, but were there kind of biases or mistreatment that prejudice that came out along the way during those different weeks of those competitions or in boardroom moments?
It's a great question, and the mechanics of the filming of The Apprentice is that we actually have very little contact with Donald during the filming because he is largely there to announce the task, go away, come back, tell you who won, go away, and only if you lose do you then see him again in the boardroom. And as the winner, I didn't see him much in the boardroom. So I didn't have much substantive contact with Donald during the filming of the show. And so the answer to that question is actually no. Although I did hear the rumors leading up to the finale that he was considering asking me to share, or that he might consider a double hiring. And Jeff knows because we prepared, he and I and our executive team at BCT for the various scenarios, including close to the one that unfolded. But then I worked for the Trump organization after I won. And there I began to see a different side. And to our whole conversation, I was the only person of color in any executive capacity for my entire year in the Trump organization. And Donald at the time had some order of 30 companies under his umbrella, many of which are now gone and defunct. But I met many of the executives who ran those companies, mostly white men. And so it said something to me about, does or does not Donald value diversity? Does he value equity? Does he value inclusion? And as the guy who he asked to share, does he value me? And I can only draw the conclusion from his pattern then and now that the answer was no. The answer was no.
It's interesting to think about that being a prize. I mean, I'm sure it was an education that was maybe not what you were hoping to get when you first applied to be on the show.
The prize was education. Yeah.
No, and I have no regrets. I mean, I had a great run on the show. It opened doors. People hear me talk critically about Donald as if I'm not appreciative of what The Apprentice has done for me. No, quite the contrary. I am very appreciative of what The Apprentice has done for me. We wouldn't be having this conversation were it not for The Apprentice. But I have to be true to myself and say that I can be appreciative of the door that was opened, but also be critical of the person who opened the door. And that's the juxtaposition where I find myself. So it was a great prize, opportunity, platform, however we term it. But I'm also critical of Donald in the same vein, as we all have our work to do. Lord knows Donald has his own work to do.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jeff, what are your recollections of some of that scenario planning or trying to anticipate what was going to happen there?
Oh yeah. It was a serious effort. We had to kind of play out different scenarios, different situations that could happen, and try to anticipate the reaction. And the reality is, we knew that if he answered the way he actually did, there'd be some blowback. There'd be some people out there who would not like the fact that he didn't share or whatever. And we said, okay, well, we're willing to Randal, are you willing to take on that heat? To stand on principle, and he was, and I'm glad that he was. But yeah, there was a robust group of folks out there who were very antagonistic towards Randal in that moment. And again, just watching the whole thing happen live is amazing. As you already know, we start the book with the whole conversation about how, as Randal described it, how it all went down, and that became an organizing, story for the beginning of our book. And it's been a few years since we've written it now. And I'll tell you the truth. I thought that when we wrote the book, I thought, we've got President Obama in here. Things are getting better. By the time my children are old enough to read this book, it won't even be that necessary. Let's just say I was wrong on that one, and now we're on to the next book.